The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete floor of my garage. Not because I was clumsy. Jake Barnes hadn't survived 23 years as an electrician by being clumsy, but because my wife's voice had just drifted through the thin walls, crystal clear on speakerphone. He's so pathetically clueless, Troy. Last night he actually tried to hold my hand during dinner. I almost laughed out loud. Dana's voice carried that particular brand of cruelty she'd perfected over our 15-year marriage. The kind that could slice through a man's pride like a hot knife through butter. "Poor bastard," came the reply. Male voice, deep, confident. "When are you going to put him out of his misery?" "Soon. Miranda thinks I should ask for an open marriage first. Keep the house, the stability for Kayla, but get my freedom too. Best of both worlds." I crouched there behind my pickup truck, oil stains on my work shirt, listening to my wife plan my humiliation with her lover. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, literally under a vehicle, while she was figuratively driving one right over my chest. The garage door burst open, and my 17-year-old daughter Kayla stormed in, her phone clutched in her manicured hand like a weapon. "Dad, Mom wants to talk to you about something important." She rolled her eyes, that practiced teenage gesture that said everything and nothing. "She says she wants to see other people, but keep the house and family stability. Don't be a total loser about it, okay? Just say yes." I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on an old rag. "That's an interesting way to deliver news, kiddo." "Whatever. I'm meeting friends at the mall." She spun on her designer sneakers I'd worked overtime to afford, and headed for the door. "Oh, and Dad? Maybe try not to be so, embarrassing about this whole thing." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone with the smell of motor oil and the echo of my family's casual dismissal. I looked around my cluttered garage, my sanctuary, with its pegboard of tools, stack of boxing magazines, and the heavy bag hanging in the corner where I'd worked out my frustrations for years. Didn't realize my marriage vows were written in erasable ink. I walked into the house, past the living room where Dana had left her laptop open on the coffee table. She was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine, the expensive stuff she'd started buying since her promotion to senior partner at Latham & Associates. "Jake, we need to talk." She didn't even look at me, just stared out the window at our modest backyard. Dana had always been beautiful, but lately she'd acquired a coldness that made her stunning features look like they were carved from ice. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I'm listening. I've been thinking about our relationship, about what I need to be happy. She turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Complete indifference. "I think we should open up our marriage. See other people. Other people. It doesn't have to change anything here. Kayla needs stability, and honestly, Jake, you need the security. Your little electrical business isn't exactly setting the world on fire." I leaned against the doorframe, studying this woman I'd loved since we were both 25. She was wearing a new dress, black, expensive, the kind that cost more than I made in a week. "So let me get this straight. You want to screw around but keep me here as what? The live-in handyman?" Her jaw tightened. "Don't be crude, Jake. This is about growth, about not being trapped by outdated concepts of marriage." "Whose idea was this? Yours or Miranda's?" Dana's best friend, Miranda Walsh, was everything my wife aspired to be. Wealthy, connected, and ruthless. She ran the biggest real estate office in Lakeview and treated everyone beneath her tax bracket like they were invisible. Miranda has nothing to do with this. Right. I nodded slowly. And I suppose this has nothing to do with Troy Brennan either. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. Red wine spread across the white tiles like red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." I stepped over the broken glass and headed for the door. "Clean that up, Dana." wouldn't want to stain anything. That night, I sat in my garage until 3 in the morning, not working on the truck, just thinking. Lakeview was the kind of town where everybody knew everybody else's business, except apparently I'd been the last to know mine. I'd built this life with my bare hands, worked construction to put myself through trade school, started my electrical business from nothing, bought this house, raised my daughter, and now my wife wanted to keep all the benefits while shopping for my replacement. The next morning I drove to the Old Mill boxing gym on Main Street. Big Mike Kowalski was already there, wrapping his hands for the heavy bag. Mike had been my coach since I was 20, back when I thought I might actually make something of myself in the ring. "You look like hell, Jake." "Feel worse." I grabbed my gloves from the locker. "Dana wants an open marriage." Mike paused, his weathered face creasing into a frown. "She cheating?" "Yep, with Troy Brennan. That piece of shit." Mike spat into the bucket beside the ring. "What are you gonna do?" I started wrapping my hands, the familiar ritual calming my nerves. "Haven't decided yet." "You know what your problem is, Jake? You're too nice. Always have been. Sometimes a man's gotta show his teeth." I spent an hour beating the hell out of the heavy bag, each punch carrying 15 years of frustration. When I was done, my knuckles were raw and my shirt was soaked with sweat, but my head was clearer. I drove home and found Dana's phone on the kitchen counter. She was upstairs in the shower, probably washing off the smell of her afternoon delight. It took me 30 seconds to find what I was looking for. Text messages, dozens of them, dating back 3 months, pictures that made my stomach turn, hotel receipts, and a selfie that confirmed what I already knew. My wife was screwing Troy Brennan, the sleaziest car dealer in 3 counties. But it was the last message that really got my attention. "Can't wait to be free of the burden. Miranda says the lawyer will make sure I get everything." I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked outside. Hargrove was watering her flowers next door, but I could tell she was really watching my house. Helen Hargrove was 73 years old and knew more about everyone's business than the FBI. "Evening, Mrs. Hargrove." "Evening, Jake. Everything all right over there?" "Heard some raised voices yesterday." "Just working through some things." She nodded knowingly. "Marriage is hard work. Takes 2 people committed to making it work." "Yes, ma'am." "It sure does." That weekend, I followed Dana to the Sunset Motel on Route 9. It wasn't hard. She'd started being careless, confident that her clueless husband would never catch on. I parked behind the dumpster and watched her walk into room 247, where Troy's red Camaro was already waiting. I sat there for 2 hours, listening to classic rock on the radio and planning my next move. When they finally came out, laughing and pawing at each other like teenagers, I waited until they drove away. Then I got out my pocket knife and gave Troy's tires some much-needed ventilation. On his windshield, I left a note written in my neatest handwriting. "Enjoy your freedom. Comes with a price." I was back home working on my truck when Mrs. Hargrove appeared at my garage door. "Jake, honey, I saw you leave earlier. Followed the same route Dana took to that motel." "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do." Her eyes were sharp behind her bifocals. "And I think your wife's going to know about it real soon." She was right. Dana confronted me that evening, her face flushed with anger. "You followed me, you psychotic bastard, and you vandalized Troy's car." "Prove it." "Mrs. Hargrove saw you." I shrugged. "Helen Hargrove is 73 and half blind. Good luck with that." Dana stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Listen to me very carefully, Jake. You're going to agree to the open marriage, or I'm going to destroy you. I'll tell everyone you're abusive. I'll take this house, I'll take Kayla, and I'll take every penny you've ever earned. You'll be living in a studio apartment, paying alimony until you die." I looked at this woman I'd loved, this woman I'd built a life with, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "You know what, Dana? You're absolutely right. I smiled and she took a step back. I agree to the open marriage, complete freedom for both of us. She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Oh, I'm being very reasonable. In fact, I'm feeling so free already. That night, I made some phone calls. By morning, Dana's credit cards were canceled, her access to our joint accounts was revoked, and her car insurance had lapsed. After all, she wanted freedom. And freedom, as I was about to teach her, comes with a price. The first sign that Dana hadn't thought her plan through came at 7:30 Monday morning. She stood in our kitchen, holding her canceled credit card and staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Jake, there's something wrong with my visa. I looked up from my coffee and the morning paper. Huh, that's weird. And my debit card isn't working either. Maybe the bank's having technical difficulties. She grabbed her phone and started dialing. I listened to her increasingly frantic conversation with customer service, explaining that yes, she was Dana Barnes, and no, she hadn't authorized anyone to remove her from the account. What do you mean my husband has sole control? We've been married 15 years. I sipped my coffee and turned the page. The sports section had a nice article about the upcoming charity boxing match at the community center. Jake. Dana's voice was dangerously quiet. What did you do? I exercised my freedom, sweetheart. Just like you wanted. Put me back on the accounts. Now. I don't think so. You see, you wanted an open marriage, which means we're essentially roommates now. And roommates split expenses 50-50. I folded the paper and looked at her. Your half of the mortgage is $1,200. Utilities are about $300. Food, insurance, maintenance, let's call it $2,000 total. I'll need that by the first of the month. You can't be serious. Completely serious. Oh, and Kayla's car payment is $450 a month. Her phone bill is another $120. Since you're her mother and you wanted this arrangement, I figure those are your responsibility now. Dana's face went through several interesting color changes. I'll call my lawyer. Good idea. That'll be about $300 an hour, right? Hope you've got cash. She stormed out and I heard her car start in the driveway, except her car didn't start. It made that clicking sound that meant the battery was drained. I disconnected it around midnight just to make her morning a little more interesting. 20 minutes later, she was back inside, her perfectly styled hair slightly messed from the walk. My car won't start. That's a shame. I'd offer to jump it, but I've got 3 service calls this morning. You know how it is. Gotta make money to pay the bills. You're being childish, Jake. I'm being free, Dana. Isn't that what you wanted? She called an Uber and left for work. I waited until she was gone, then went next door to talk to Mrs. Hargrove. Helen, I owe you an apology for yesterday. You were right to be concerned about Dana. The old woman invited me in for coffee, and I told her a carefully edited version of the truth. How Dana wanted to see other people. How she'd been meeting someone at the motel. How she'd threatened to take everything I'd worked for. That poor girl, Mrs. Hargrove said, shaking her head. She's lost her way. I'm afraid so. And now she's trying to turn Kayla against me too. By noon, Helen had called her sister, Margaret, who worked at the bank. Margaret had called her daughter, Susan, who was a paralegal at Dana's law firm. Susan had called her friend Jennifer, who ran the coffee shop where all the lawyers ate lunch. Lakeview was a small town, and news traveled fast, especially news about cheating wives and their long-suffering husbands. I spent the afternoon working on a rewiring job for Tom Patterson, who owned the hardware store. Tom was also the treasurer of the Lakeview Business Association and a deacon at First Baptist. Heard you and Dana are having some troubles, he said while I installed a new electrical panel in his basement. Just working through some things. Heard she's been seen around town with Troy Brennan. I paused in my work. People talk. They sure do. And most folks remember what kind of man you are, Jake. What kind of husband and father you've been. He handed me a wire nut. Just want you to know you've got friends in this town. That evening, I went to Smokey's bar on Main Street. It was the kind of place where working men went to drink beer and complain about their lives. Smokey himself was behind the bar, a 60-year-old ex-Marine who'd seen everything twice. "Jake Barnes, heard your wife's been spreading her wings. News travels fast. Faster when the news involves Troy Brennan. That boy's been through half the married women in this county." Smokey poured me a beer without being asked. Of course, most of their husbands didn't have your reputation. What reputation is that? Smart, patient, and mean as a snake when you need to be. I was halfway through my beer when Troy Brennan himself walked in. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, handsome in a sleazy way, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. He saw me immediately and had the balls to walk over. "Jake Barnes, right? I'm Troy Brennan." "I know who you are." He sat down without being invited, signaling Smokey for a whiskey. "Look, I think we should talk." Man to man. About what? About Dana. About this situation we find ourselves in. I took a long sip of my beer, studying his face. He was nervous, trying to hide it behind false confidence. "What situation is that, Troy?" "Come on, man. We're both adults here. Dana's told me about your arrangement. The open marriage thing." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I just want you to know I respect what you're doing. Takes a big man to put his wife's happiness first." "Is that what I'm doing?" "Sure. And hey, if you ever want to talk about it, maybe grab a beer sometime. I'm around. Hell, maybe I can even get you a deal on a new truck. That old Ford of yours has seen better days." I finished my beer and stood up. "Troy, let me give you some free advice." "Yeah?" "You might want to check your insurance coverage. Make sure you're protected against unexpected events." His smile faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all. Just looking out for a fellow businessman." I left him sitting there, probably wondering if that was a threat or friendly advice. The truth was, I hadn't decided yet. When I got home, Dana was waiting in the living room with Kayla and Miranda Walsh. Miranda was everything I'd expected, perfectly dressed, perfectly made up, and perfectly condescending. "Jake, we need to talk," Dana said. "All of us?" I looked at Miranda. I didn't realize this was a group activity. "Miranda is here as my friend and advisor," Dana said. "She's helping me navigate this transition." "How thoughtful." I sat down in my recliner, the one piece of furniture in the house that was completely mine. "What can I do for you, ladies?" Miranda leaned forward, her voice smooth as silk. "Jake, I understand you've been having some difficulty adjusting to your new arrangement." "Have I?" "Cutting off Dana's access to money, sabotaging her car, these are not the actions of a mature adult." I looked at my daughter, who was staring at her. Phone, pretending not to listen. "Kayla, honey, why don't you go upstairs? The adults need to talk." "I'm 17, Dad. I'm not a child." "No, but you're not paying the bills either. Upstairs. Now." She huffed and stomped out, leaving me alone with my wife and her puppet master. "Here's the thing, Miranda," I said. "Dana wanted freedom and I gave it to her. Complete freedom. That means freedom to pay her own way. That's not how marriage works, Jake. It's how this marriage works now." Dana finally spoke up. "Jake, be reasonable. I can't afford to..." "To what? Live like an adult? Make your own choices and accept the consequences?" I stood up. "You wanted to see other people, Dana. Congratulations. You're seeing them. But you don't get to see them on my dime." Miranda's eyes flashed with anger. "You're being vindictive and petty. I'm being free. Just like Dana taught me." That night, I lay in bed listening to Dana cry in the guest room where she'd been sleeping for the past week. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to take her in my arms and pretend none of this had happened. But that part was getting smaller every day. The next morning brought a new surprise. Kayla came downstairs for breakfast, and her phone was out of power. "Dad, something's wrong with my phone." "Did you pay the bill?" What? No, you always… She stopped, understanding dawning on her face. You didn't. Your mother wanted to take responsibility for your expenses. I'm sure she'll get it sorted out. This is so unfair. All my friends are going to think I'm ignoring them. Then you better talk to your mom about getting your own plan. Dana appeared in the kitchen, looking haggard. She'd clearly had a rough night. Jake, you can't punish Kayla for this. She's innocent. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not paying for services I'm not responsible for anymore. She's your daughter. She's our daughter. 50-50, remember? I grabbed my coffee and headed for the garage. I had work to do and bills to pay. My bills. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Mrs. Hargrove watering her flowers again. She gave me a little wave and a knowing smile. The word was spreading, and in a town like Lakeview, reputation was everything. Dana was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The charity boxing match was held at the Lakeview Community Center on a Friday night in October. Half the town showed up, partly for charity, mostly for the entertainment. I'd been training with Big Mike for 3 weeks, getting ready for what was supposed to be a friendly exhibition match. What I hadn't expected was my opponent. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer called out, in the red corner, weighing in at 185 pounds, Troy Brennan. The crowd cheered, but I caught the undercurrent of whispers. Everyone knew about Dana and Troy by now. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be just a friendly match. I looked across the ring at Troy, who was bouncing on his toes, throwing shadow punches. He was in good shape, I'd give him that. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He thought this was about pride. It wasn't. This was about strategy. The bell rang, and Troy came out swinging. He was strong, aggressive, throwing haymakers that would have flattened most men. But I'd been boxing for 20 years, and I knew how to make a man beat himself. I covered up, let him tire himself out against my gloves and arms. The crowd was getting restless, probably wondering why I wasn't fighting back. In the second round, Troy caught me with a solid right cross that snapped my head back. "Come on, old man," he panted. "Fight back." Instead, I clinched with him, pulling him close so I could whisper in his ear. "Enjoying my wife, Troy?" His whole body tensed. "Hope you're enjoying it while it lasts," I continued, "because when I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job selling used cars in Omaha." He tried to pull away, but I held him tight. "You think you won something? You think you're getting a prize?" I chuckled. "You're getting my leftovers, and you're welcome to them." The referee broke us apart, and Troy was visibly shaken. He came at me wild and angry, which was exactly what I wanted. In the third round, I let him land a combination that put me down. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. The crowd went crazy as I stayed down for an 8 count, then got up and finished the round. When it was over, Troy had won on points, but everyone in that building knew who had really been in control. At the after-party, I took the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and supporting our local charities," I began. "It's events like this that show what kind of community we have here in Lakeview. A community that believes in family values, in commitment, in standing by the people we love." I found Dana in the crowd. She was standing with Miranda, both of them looking uncomfortable. Of course, we all know that families go through tough times. Sometimes people lose their way. Sometimes they forget what's really important. I paused, letting the silence stretch. But that's when a community shows its true character. That's when we stand by the people who've stood by us. The applause was thunderous. I handed back the microphone and walked off the stage, leaving Troy and Dana to deal with the stares and whispers. Later that night, I found a note slipped under my garage door. "You're playing a dangerous game, Jake. Some people don't like to lose. A friend." I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. If they wanted to play games, I was ready. The next week, I started phase 2 of my plan. I'd spent years wiring houses and businesses all over Lakeview, which meant I knew things. I knew which businesses were struggling, which marriages were shaky, and which secrets people thought were buried. I started with Troy's car dealership. A few phone calls to former customers, a few questions about their financing experiences, and suddenly, the State Consumer Protection Agency was very interested in Brennan Motors. Then I visited Dana's law firm, not as her husband, but as a potential client who'd heard disturbing rumors about attorney-client confidentiality breaches. I never made any direct accusations, just asked a lot of questions that made the senior partners very nervous. But my real masterpiece was the anonymous letter I sent to the Lakeview Gazette, detailing the open marriage trend that was apparently sweeping through our community's professional class. I didn't name names, but in a town of 8,000 people, I didn't have to. The article ran on the front page, "Modern Marriage or Moral Decay. Local couples embrace alternative lifestyles." Dana was waiting for me when I got home that evening. "You son of a bastard." "Hello to you too, sweetheart. You know what you've done. Everyone's talking about us, about me." "Are they? How interesting. My boss called me into his office today. Asked me about my personal situation and how it might affect the firm's reputation." I hung up my jacket and opened a beer. "What did you tell him?" "I told him it was none of his business." "And how did that go over?" Her silence was answer enough. "You know what your problem is, Dana? You thought you could have it both ways. Keep the respect and reputation of being married while screwing around on the side. But reputation is like virginity. Once it's gone, you can't get it back." She slapped me, hard enough to make my ears ring. I rubbed my cheek and smiled. "Feel better?" "I hate you." "No, you don't. You hate that I'm not rolling over and giving up like you expected. You hate that actions have consequences, but you don't hate me. If you hated me, you would have just filed for divorce instead of trying to have your cake and eat it too." That weekend, Kayla came to me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, some of the kids at school are saying horrible things about Mom." "What kind of things?" "About her and Mr. Brennan. About our family." She wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Why can't you just fix this?" I pulled her into a hug, feeling my heart break a little. "Some things can't be fixed, kiddo. Some things can only be endured." "But it's not fair." "No, it's not. But life isn't fair. The only thing we can control is how we respond to unfairness. I just want things to go back to the way they were. I know, but they can't. Your mother made sure of that." That night, I made a decision. It was time to find out exactly how deep this conspiracy went. I drove to Miranda Walsh's penthouse apartment downtown. She lived in the only luxury building in Lakeview, a converted grain silo that some developer had turned into condos for people with more money than sense. I didn't go to her door. Instead, I sat in my truck across the street and watched. At 9:30, Troy's Camaro pulled into the parking garage. Interesting. At 11:15, he left. But not before I got some very clear photos with the telephoto lens I'd borrowed from my friend Dave, who did wedding photography on weekends. The next morning, I had the photos developed at the 1-hour photo place in the mall. Then I made some copies and mailed them to Troy's fiancée, a sweet girl named Lisa who worked at the bank. I also made copies for Dana. I left them on the kitchen counter with a note. "Thought you should know what kind of man you're throwing your marriage away for. Your loving husband." When Dana found them, she went ballistic. "Where did you get these? Does it matter?" "Troy told me Miranda was just helping him with some real estate investments. Is that what they're calling it now?" She stared at the photos, her face cycling through anger, hurt, and something that looked almost like relief. "He's been cheating on me." Imagine that. A man who cheats with you will cheat on you. Who could have seen that coming? Don't be smug, Jake. I'm not being smug. I'm being realistic. You threw away 15 years of marriage for a man who's been playing you from day one. Miranda wouldn't... Miranda orchestrated this whole thing, Dana. She's been pulling your strings like a puppet master, and you've been dancing to her tune. That's not true, isn't it? Whose idea was the open marriage? Who recommended Troy in the first place? Who's been feeding you all those lines about finding yourself and not being trapped by outdated concepts? I could see the wheels turning in her head, the pieces finally starting to fall into place. Why would Miranda want to hurt me? Because she's not hurting you, sweetheart. She's hurting me, and you're just collateral damage. That afternoon, I got a phone call from Tom Patterson at the hardware store. Jake, you need to know something. Miranda Walsh has been asking questions about you, about your business, your finances, your past. What kind of questions? The kind that make me think she's building a file on you. And not for anything good. I thanked Tom and hung up, my mind racing. Miranda wasn't just Dana's friend giving bad advice. She was actively working to destroy me. The question was why. It took me 3 days to figure it out. 3 days of digging through old records, making phone calls, and piecing together a puzzle that went back 7 years. Miranda Walsh Real Estate had tried to buy the property where I'd built my business. When I'd refused to sell, she'd tried to have the city condemn it for a development project. When that failed, she'd tried to get my business license revoked on trumped-up safety violations. I'd fought her every step of the way and won. But apparently, Miranda Walsh was the kind of woman who never forgot a slight. She'd been planning this revenge for years, waiting for the right opportunity. And when Dana started working at the law firm that handled Miranda's business, she'd found her opening. Now, I understood the real game. This wasn't about Dana wanting freedom or finding herself. This was about Miranda Walsh using my wife to destroy my life. Well, two could play that game, and I was very good at games. I spent the next week becoming someone I'd never been before, a detective. I followed Miranda Walsh like she was a suspect in a murder case, documenting her movements, her meetings, her phone calls. I learned her routines, her weaknesses, her secrets. What I found was better than I'd hoped for. Miranda Walsh wasn't just a successful real estate agent. She was a criminal. She'd been skimming money from her clients' escrow accounts, falsifying property inspections, and taking kickbacks from contractors. But her biggest crime was running a charity scam through the Lakeview Children's Foundation, pocketing donations meant for underprivileged kids. I also discovered that her affair with Troy wasn't just about intimacy. They were business partners in a money laundering scheme, using his car dealership to clean cash from her various illegal activities. But the most interesting thing I learned was that Miranda had been blackmailing Dana's boss, Richard Latham, with photos of him with a prostitute in Chicago. That's how Dana had gotten her promotion, and why the law firm was so nervous about their reputation. Armed with this information, I was ready to make my move. First, I paid a visit to Big Mike at the gym. I need a favor, Mike. Name it. I need you and some of the boys to help me with a little theater production. Mike grinned. What kind of production? The kind where we scare some very bad people into telling the truth. That evening, I called Miranda and told her I wanted to meet. Told her I was ready to make a deal, that the fight had gone out of me, and I just wanted to salvage what I could from the wreckage of my marriage. She agreed to meet me at her penthouse, probably thinking she'd finally broken me. She had no idea what was coming. I arrived at 9 o'clock with a bottle of wine and what looked like legal documents. Miranda answered the door in a silk robe, playing the role of the sophisticated woman of the world. Jake, I'm so glad you called. I've been hoping we could work something out. I'll bet you have. She poured wine and settled onto her white leather couch, crossing her legs in a way that was probably supposed to be seductive. You know, Jake, I've always thought you were an intelligent man. Too intelligent to let pride destroy your life. Is that what I've been doing? Of course. This whole situation with Dana, it doesn't have to be ugly. We can find a solution that works for everyone. What kind of solution? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Dana loves you, Jake. She's just confused right now, going through a phase. If you're patient, if you're understanding, she'll come back to you. And Troy? Troy is temporary, a midlife crisis, nothing more. I sipped my wine and nodded thoughtfully. So, you think I should just wait it out? Exactly. Don't make any rash decisions. Don't do anything that might push Dana away permanently. Like what? Like filing for divorce, like making demands, like trying to control her finances. She smiled. Just be patient and everything will work out. I set down my wine glass and looked at her. Really looked at her. Miranda, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I'm stupid? Her smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? I mean, do you actually think I don't know what you've been doing? Do you think I haven't figured out that you've been orchestrating this whole thing? Jake, I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Ever since I refused to sell you my property. Ever since I cost you that development deal. The color drained from her face. You saw an opportunity when Dana started working for Latham. Saw a way to get close to my family, to my wife, so you started working on her, filling her head with poison about me, about our marriage. That's not... Then you introduced her to Troy, your business partner, your lover, your co-conspirator. You thought you could use him to destroy my marriage while you destroyed my business. Miranda stood up, her composure finally cracking. You can't prove any of that. Can I? I pulled out my phone and played a recording of her conversation with Troy from 2 nights ago. I'd been sitting in the parking garage, and the acoustics in that concrete echo chamber were surprisingly good. The old bastard is finally breaking. Her voice came through the speaker. Give it another week, and he'll sign over everything just to make the pain stop. And if he doesn't? Troy's voice. Then we move to phase 2. The domestic abuse allegations, the restraining order, the emergency custody hearing. By the time we're done, Jake Barnes will be living under a bridge. I stopped the recording and smiled at Miranda's shocked expression. You know what your mistake was, Miranda? You underestimated me. You thought I was just some dumb blue-collar guy who'd roll over when the pressure got too intense. Jake, let me explain. Oh, I think you've explained enough. That's when the lights went out. In the darkness, I heard Miranda gasp. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs, multiple sets of boots climbing toward the penthouse. What's happening? Miranda whispered. Justice, I replied. The footsteps stopped outside the door and someone knocked. Hard. Police! Open up! Miranda fumbled for the light switch, but nothing happened. I'd cut the power to the building 20 minutes ago. That's not the police, Miranda. That's just some friends of mine from the gym. They're here to help you remember the truth. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. We know you're in there, lady. We just want to talk. Miranda was hyperventilating now. Jake, please. Whatever you want, we can work it out. What I want is very simple. I want you to call Dana and tell her the truth. All of it. How you've been manipulating her, how you and Troy planned this whole thing, how you've been using her to get revenge on me. I can't do that. Sure you can. In fact, you're going to do it right now. The door shook as someone tested the locks. Jake, this is insane. I can't what? Fight back? Defend myself? Protect my family? I stood up and walked to the window. You know what's insane, Miranda? Thinking you could destroy a man's life and not face any consequences. I opened the window and called down to the parking garage. Mike, she's being difficult. Want us to come up? Big Mike's voice echoed off the concrete walls. Give her another minute to think about it. I turned back to Miranda, who was now visibly shaking. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Dana and confess everything. Then you're going to call Troy and tell him the game is over. Then you're going to pack a bag and leave town for a while. And if I don't? Then my friends are going to come up here and have a very serious conversation with you about the money you've been stealing from the children's charity. Did you know Big Mike has a grandson with special needs? He takes that charity work very personally. Miranda looked at the door, then at me, then at her phone. You're bluffing. Am I? You want to find out? The door handle rattled, and someone called out, "Time's up, lady!" Miranda grabbed her phone with shaking hands. What do I tell Dana? The truth, that you've been lying to her from day one, that Troy is your lover, not hers, that this whole thing was about getting revenge on me, and she was just a pawn in your game. She dialed Dana's number with trembling fingers. Dana. It's Miranda. I need to tell you something important. I listened as Miranda confessed everything, how she'd been manipulating Dana for months, feeding her dissatisfaction with our marriage, how she'd introduced Troy specifically to create problems between us, how the whole open marriage idea had been designed to humiliate me and drive me to financial ruin. Dana's voice came through the speaker, shocked and angry. You used me? You made me destroy my marriage for your revenge? Dana, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. You're lying! You planned all of this. The call ended, and Miranda looked at me with tears in her eyes. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything. No, Miranda. You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew who was really responsible. I walked to the door and unlocked it. Big Mike and 3 other guys from the gym were standing in the hallway, looking like they meant business. Everything okay in there, Jake? Everything's fine, Mike. Mrs. Walsh was just leaving town for a while. Miranda looked at the 4 large men blocking her doorway, then back at me. This isn't over, Jake. Yes, it is. And if you're smart, you'll keep it that way. I walked past Mike and his friends, leaving Miranda to pack her bags and disappear into the night. The next morning, Dana was waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked like she'd been crying all night. Is it true? What Miranda said? Which part? All of it. That she's been manipulating me, that Troy was her lover, that this whole thing was about hurting you. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. What do you think? I think I've been the biggest fool in the world. We've all been fools, Dana. The question is what we do now. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Can you ever forgive me? I studied this woman I'd loved for 15 years, this woman who'd betrayed me, humiliated me, and tried to destroy everything I'd built. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to try. It was a start. The annual Lakeview Block Party was scheduled for the last Saturday in October, right on Main Street. The whole town would be there, families, businesses, local politicians, everyone who mattered in our little corner of the world. It was the perfect stage for my final act. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing, gathering evidence, making copies, and planning every detail. Dana thought we were working on reconciliation, and maybe we were. But first, there were some accounts that needed settling. The morning of the block party, I loaded my truck with everything I'd need: photos, documents, audio recordings, and a few special surprises I'd been saving for just this occasion. Jake, what's all this stuff? Dana asked as I carried boxes to the truck. Just some things for the block party. What kind of things? I smiled at her. You'll see. The party started at noon, with food trucks, live music, and booths set up by local businesses and organizations. I helped Dana set up the law firm's booth, playing the role of the supportive husband while I scanned the crowd for familiar faces. Troy was there, working the crowd like the politician he'd always wanted to be. He was running for city council, trying to rebuild his reputation after the consumer protection investigation had damaged his car dealership. Miranda was nowhere to be seen. Word around town was that she'd left for an extended vacation in Florida, though everyone knew she'd really been run out of town in disgrace. At 2 o'clock, I made my move. The main stage was set up in front of the courthouse where local bands and speakers would entertain the crowd throughout the day. I'd volunteered to help with the sound system, which meant I had access to the microphone and speakers. When the mayor finished his speech about community values and family traditions, I stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment." The crowd quieted, probably expecting another boring speech from a local businessman. "My name is Jake Barnes, and I've lived in Lakeview my whole life. I've worked here, raised my family here, and built my business here. This town means everything to me." I paused, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. But lately, I've learned some disturbing things about our community. Things that challenge everything I thought I knew about the people we trust, the people we do business with, the people we call friends. I could see Dana in the crowd, her face pale with worry. Troy was trying to push through the crowd toward the stage, probably planning to stop me. 6 months ago, I discovered that my wife was having an affair. A murmur ran through the crowd. In a small town, everyone loves a scandal. Now, affairs happen. People make mistakes, marriages fail, life goes on. But this wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy designed to destroy my family, my business, and my reputation. I pulled out the first photograph, Miranda and Troy leaving her penthouse together. This is Miranda Walsh, who many of you know as a successful businesswoman and pillar of our community. And this is Troy Brennan, who's asking for your votes in next month's city council election. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. What you're looking at is proof that these two people conspired to seduce my wife, not for love, not for passion, but for revenge. You see, 7 years ago, I refused to sell Miranda my property for one of her development projects. I cost her a lot of money, and she's the kind of person who never forgets a slight. I held up more photos, more documents. So she waited. She planned. And when my wife started working for a law firm that handled Miranda's business, she saw her opportunity. Troy had reached the front of the crowd and was shouting something, but the microphone drowned him out. Miranda Walsh spent months manipulating my wife, filling her head with poison about our marriage, convincing her that she deserved better. Then she introduced her to Troy here, her business partner and lover. I played the audio recording of Miranda and Troy discussing their plan to destroy me. The old bastard is finally breaking. Give it another week, and he'll sign over everything just to make the pain stop. The crowd gasped. Someone in the back shouted, "That's horrible!" But wait, there's more, I continued, channeling my inner game show host. Because while they were destroying my marriage, they were also stealing from you. I held up bank records and financial documents. Miranda Walsh has been embezzling money from the Lakeview Children's Foundation for 3 years. Money that was supposed to help underprivileged kids has been going into her personal accounts. The crowd was getting angry now. I could see people shouting, pointing at Troy, who was trying to back away from the stage. And Troy Brennan's car dealership has been laundering that money, along with cash from several other illegal activities. The state attorney general's office will be very interested in these documents. I held up the final piece of evidence, photos of Richard Latham with a prostitute. And just to make this scandal complete, here's proof that Miranda has been blackmailing my wife's boss, Richard Latham, to advance Dana's career. That promotion she got last year? It wasn't because of her legal skills. The crowd erupted. People were shouting, booing, demanding answers. Troy tried to run, but several men from the crowd blocked his path. Someone called for the police. I held up my hand for silence. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, "Jake, why are you airing your dirty laundry in public? Why not handle this privately?" The crowd quieted, waiting for my answer. Because these people didn't just attack me, they attacked our community. They stole from our children, corrupted our businesses, and made a mockery of everything we claim to value. I looked directly at Dana, who was crying openly now. My wife made a mistake. A terrible, devastating mistake. But she was manipulated by people she trusted, people who pretended to be her friends while they used her for their own selfish purposes. I set down the microphone and walked to the edge of the stage. Troy Brennan is not fit to serve on our city council. Miranda Walsh is not fit to do business in our town, and anyone who would steal from children's charities deserves whatever punishment the law allows. I picked up the microphone one last time. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the block party. The crowd exploded into chaos as I stepped down from the stage. People were shouting questions, taking pictures, calling friends and family to share the news. Troy had disappeared into the crowd, probably heading for his car. Several people were already on their phones, presumably calling the police or the media. Dana pushed through the crowd to reach me, tears streaming down her face. Jake, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at this woman I'd loved, this woman who'd betrayed me, this woman who'd been used as a weapon against me. I know you are, Dana. But sorry doesn't fix everything. What happens now? Now? Now we see if there's anything left of our marriage worth saving. Big Mike appeared at my elbow, grinning like a prize fighter who'd just won the championship. Hell of a show, Jake. Hell of a show. Thanks, Mike. What's next? I looked around at the chaos I'd created, at the town I'd lived in my whole life, at the people who were staring at me with mixtures of shock, admiration, and fear. Now I go home and figure out what comes next. As I walked back to my truck, people stepped aside to let me pass. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered to their companions, a few even applauded. I'd become something I'd never planned to be. The villain who'd saved the day. Mrs. Hargrove was waiting by my truck, her elderly face creased with what might have been a smile. That was quite a performance, Jake. Thank you, Helen. Think you might have gone a little overboard? I considered the question seriously. Probably. But sometimes a man has to make a statement. And what statement was that? I looked back at the crowd still gathered around the stage, at the chaos and confusion I'd unleashed, at the town that would be talking about this day for years to come. That actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price, and that sometimes the only way to get justice is to take it yourself. I climbed into my truck and drove home, leaving behind the wreckage of several lives and the birth of a legend that would outlive us all. The next morning, the story was front-page news in papers from Lakeview to Chicago. Local man exposes conspiracy at town block party. The video someone had taken with their phone went viral on social media, turning me into a folk hero for betrayed spouses everywhere. Troy Brennan was arrested the following Tuesday on charges of money laundering and fraud. He'd eventually plead guilty and serve 18 months in federal prison. Miranda Walsh was arrested in Florida a week later. The children's charity theft alone would cost her 3 years, not counting the other charges that kept piling up. Richard Latham resigned from the law firm and moved to California, where nobody knew about his extracurricular activities. And Dana? Dana moved back into our bedroom, started marriage counseling, and began the long process of earning back my trust. Whether she'd succeed remained to be seen. As for me, I went back to work, back to my routine, back to being Jake Barnes, small-town electrician. Except now, I was also Jake Barnes, the man who'd stood up to the people who thought they could destroy him. Some people called me a hero. Others called me a villain. I didn't much care either way. I'd gotten my revenge, protected my family, and exposed the truth. In my book, that was a pretty good day's work. Let them call me the villain. After all, every story needs one, and this one finally had an ending worth watching.